Okay, let's get into it. We're looking back at the first 100 days of the Trump 2.0 administration and specifically what went down with big tech.
Yeah, it's a fascinating period because, you remember the inauguration, right? January 20th, 2025.
Oh, absolutely. The visuals were pretty striking. All those tech CEOs front and center.
Exactly. You had Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai from Google, Elon Musk. They were all right there, the VIP seats.
It really gave off this vibe of a super strong alliance. Like maybe those warnings President Biden had made about a tech industrial complex, maybe they were coming true.
That was definitely the initial impression. The optics were powerful, suggesting, billionaires getting cozy with power.
And if you're finding this initial setup interesting, folks, maybe now's a good time to hit that like button and subscribe. We'll be digging into how this all played out.
Good point, because things didn't exactly stay that way.
Right. But initially, there were signs pointing towards this partnership idea, weren't there?
For sure. First off, Elon Musk gets appointed to head up this new Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE, they called it.
DOGE, right. Aimed at cutting red tape, supposedly.
Yeah, streamlining things. And then you had reports swirling about his pretty hefty donation to the Trump campaign, something like $300 million.
Wow, okay. That's significant.
Definitely sends a signal. Plus, the administration came out swinging against the EU, warning them off targeting American tech companies.
And they got rid of the Biden AI executive order, too, didn't they?
They did, rescinded it. And there was also that talk, maybe just a rumor, maybe more, about Apple's Tim Cook having a hand in delaying tariffs on smartphones.
So all these little pieces together, it looked like maybe those tech leaders who backed Trump or at least showed up were going to get a pretty favorable environment.
That certainly seemed to be the hope for some of them. It looks like their gamble, if you want to call it that, might pay off.
But as you hinted, that picture changed. And pretty quickly, right? Within those first 100 days.
Oh yeah, dramatically. What looked like a partnership, or maybe a bromance, as some might say, it started to feel different, more strained.
How so? What words are people using?
Well, some described it as more of a situationship, not quite a real alliance. Or even darker, like subservience for fear.
Subservience for fear? That sounds intense.
It does. The idea being that maybe tech wasn't cozying up out of shared interest, but maybe out of fear of what the administration could do.
So those early hopes started to evaporate.
Completely. Those same leaders who looked like they were aligning with power suddenly felt under siege, was a phrase used.
Under siege from the same administration they seem to be supporting.
Exactly. It's been likened to a kind of Faustian bargain, making a deal that ultimately backfires.
Okay, so what caused this shift? What were the key factors driving this breakdown or souring?
Well, one huge factor was the rise of what people started calling MAGA antitrust.
MAGA antitrust. So instead of easing off on regulating big tech,
they doubled down, basically. The administration put people known for being pretty critical of big tech into key roles at the FTC and the Department of Justice.
So the crackdown that started under Biden didn't stop. It actually continued, just maybe with a different flavor.
Precisely. It wasn't about deregulation. It was just maybe different motivations, but the pressure remained or even increased.
And did this translate into actual actions?
Absolutely. You saw the DOJ keep pushing for Google to sell off its Chrome browser.
Yeah.
That didn't go away.
Okay, what else?
The FTC kept up the pressure on Meta, Mark Zuckerberg's company, trying to force them to divest Instagram and WhatsApp.
Still, even after all the previous attempts.
Still going. And there were ongoing financial penalties against Meta, too. Zuckerberg himself had to spend a lot of time testifying in his antitrust trial.
That must have been stressful.
You'd imagine so. And there were even reports, kind of whispers, that a Trump ally mentioned the president still wanted some kind of retribution from Zuckerberg. So, not exactly friendly.
Wow. Okay, so antitrust was a big piece. What else contributed to this souring relationship?
Tariffs. That was another major point of friction. Big, broad tariffs.
Right. I remember hearing about those. How broad are we talking?
Well, there was a baseline 10% tariff on pretty much everything globally, and then a massive 145% tariff specifically on goods from China.
145%? That's huge.
It's enormous. And predictable, really. It led to retaliation from other countries. And that hit big tech hard.
How did it impact them specifically?
Well, Amazon reportedly faced some serious headwinds. Meta saw its stocks take a hit because, worries about advertising revenue drying up.
Makes sense. Global economy gets squeezed. Ad budgets are often first to go.
Exactly. And Google's plans for building out data centers got disrupted. Even Apple.
Didn't they get that initial delay on smartphone tariffs you mentioned?
They might have initially, but even they ended up having to seriously consider shifting production out of China, just in case. The writing was kind of on the wall.
So the tariffs were causing real operational and financial pain.
Significant pain. And then there was another area, export controls, specifically on AI chips going to China.
Ah, the advanced stuff. That was already a sensitive area, wasn't it?
Very. And the administration intensified those controls. They even went after an Nvidia chip that had been specifically designed to comply with the previous set of rules.
Ouch. So Nvidia got caught out.
Big time. They had to take a massive charge, something like $5.5 billion, in the first quarter of 2025 because of it.
$5.5 billion, just like that.
Just like that. And the CEO, Jensen Huang, who, remember, might have been at the inauguration or donated, reportedly saw his personal net worth drop by something like $21.6 billion.
Incredible. So the financial hit was real, both for the companies and for the individuals.
Absolutely. And maybe the clearest sign of all this was just looking at the stock market.
The Magnificent Seven, how did they fare?
Not well. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Tesla, Alphabet, Meta. Their combined market value dropped by a staggering $4.2 trillion.
Brilliant.
With a T. Yep. $4.2 trillion. That's about a 24% decrease just from the inauguration through late April 2025.
That's a massive loss of value.
It really underscores the shift. And significantly, many of those billionaires who were at the inauguration or who donated big, they saw huge chunks of their personal wealth just vanish during that period.
Okay, so let's circle back to those initial signs of alliance. How did they actually pan out? Elon Musk and DOGE, for instance?
Right, so Musk got the big title, head of the Department of Government Efficiency, but it seems his focus was mostly on broader government cuts.
Like reducing federal jobs, cutting programs, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Not so much on the specific regulatory issues facing big tech itself. The actual impact on tech regulation seems, well, unclear at best.
And didn't he also start clashing with other tech leaders?
Oh, absolutely. Very publicly. He got into disputes, even lawsuits, with people he was sitting near at the inauguration. Tim Cook at Apple, Zuckerberg at Meta, even OpenAI and Microsoft.
So much for unity.
Pretty much the opposite. And while his space company, SpaceX, apparently did okay, his main company, Tesla, its market value plummeted.
Right. So despite the DOGE role, things weren't great for him personally.
He actually had the biggest individual wealth loss among all billionaires in those first 100 days. His net worth reportedly dropped by about $45.3 billion.
$45 billion. Wow.
Yeah. There were even reports he was kind of stepping back from the DOGE responsibilities later on. So that initial appointment didn't seem to shield him much.
What about the donations? You mentioned Musk's $300 million, but was it all one-sided?
That's another complexity. While Musk's donation was huge, if you look at who donated to the Biden-Harris campaigns in 2024.
Let me guess, some tech names there too.
You got it. Big donors came from places like Bloomberg, LinkedIn, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple.
So the idea of some unified right-wing tech industrial complex maybe wasn't quite accurate.
It seems like an oversimplification, yeah. Tech money was flowing to both sides, as it often does.
Okay, and the warning to the EU? Did that work? Did they back off finding U.S. tech companies?
Nope, not really. Despite the tough talk from the administration they call the EU finds economic extortion, I think the EU went right ahead.
Seriously?
Yep, they fined both Apple and Meta hundreds of millions of euros for breaking new digital rules over there.
So the warning had no teeth.
It didn't seem particularly effective. I mean, governments often try to stick up for their home companies abroad, but this didn't look like some special, super effective alliance saving big tech from European regulators.
And finally, that rescinded Biden AI order. Did that mean smooth sailing for AI development?
Not necessarily. It didn't really provide the kind of regulatory relief tech companies might have hoped for. Instead, the focus just sort of shifted.
Shifted to what?
Towards concerns about ideological bias or engineered social agendas in AI and tech platforms.
So new potential headaches, like looking into platform censorship.
Exactly. So it wasn't deregulation, just regulation from a different angle, creating new challenges.
So when you put it all together, that inauguration photo looks incredibly misleading in hindsight.
It really does. It wasn't this blossoming partnership. The narrative that emerged later was more about big tech trying to, well, placate the administration.
Placate, like trying to appease them, maybe, as you said earlier, out of fear?
That seems to be the more likely interpretation based on what happened next. Fear of regulation, fear of tariffs, fear of antitrust actions.
And despite those efforts, many of them took a massive financial hit anyway.
Huge hits. We mentioned Musk's $45 billion loss, but Jeff Bezos reportedly lost around $35 or $36 billion. Zuckerberg about $22 billion.
What else?
Oh yeah. The Google co-founders, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, their fortunes dropped by roughly $25.6 billion and $27.4 billion respectively.
Even Larry Ellison, he met with Trump too, right?
He did, shortly after the inauguration, and he reportedly roughly lost around $28.2 billion. So being seen with the administration donating, it didn't insulate them financially.
Were there any billionaires who did do well during this period?
Interestingly, yes. But often it was because they were positioned differently. Either they managed to avoid the worst impacts of Trump's policies, like tariffs, or they were actively counteracting them.
How so?
While some focused on sectors like government contracts, Palantir was mentioned, others were in consumer staples, like Walmart, which are often more resilient.
And what about someone like Warren Buffett? He wasn't exactly a fan of tariffs, was he?
No, he'd called them an act of war previously. But his wealth apparently grew significantly, his strategy, holding lots and lots of cash, which turned out to be pretty smart in that environment.
Fascinating. So the big takeaway here seems to be that the early narrative of Trump 2.0 being great for big tech was just wrong.
Largely an illusion, it seems, despite showing up, despite donating, despite trying to, get on the administration's good side.
They still faced antitrust, they got hit by tariffs, they dealt with export controls.
Exactly. The negative consequences were significant for many of the biggest names in tech. Trying to placate the administration just didn't seem to deliver the results they might have hoped for.
A really complex and frankly quite surprising turn of events given where things seem to start.
Definitely shows how quickly political landscapes can shift and how initial appearances can be deceiving.
Well, that was a really insightful look back at those first 100 days. If you found this breakdown useful, please do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.
Yeah, definitely subscribe.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration today.
Thanks for having me.